Oak Island Treasure Found. My name is Bill. Welcome to the Night Terrors Weekend Show. And we're starting right now. Welcome to Elderground and Takahamo Plateau. Welcome to Mike Mott and Zerithian. Yes, we have a Discord. Click on the link in the description below. This is our show schedule. Brand X-Ray is a new addition to the lineup. The subject matter of every one of those shows is guaranteed to have been banned by YouTube. The Brand X-Ray series drops an episode every week, early Wednesday morning. And this means I am uploading videos with some fresh content for the first time in 4 years. So don't miss them. And Wednesday night is movie night, when we gather for a terrifying double feature only on Twitch and hosted by Gotchaman. Welcome, Green Tea. Zerithian on a double platform. Thank you, Zerithian. Philip Blair wants to know, is the Discord haunted? David Bryce says good evening. Welcome, David. Did I welcome Green Tea yet? If I didn't, then welcome Green Tea. And T Plateau loves Legina Brothers. I guess that's either a series or a coffee. Coming up this Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, Mad Monster Party, in which the Baron von Frankenstein retires from the monstrosity-making business to summon an international roster of monsters to a creepy convention. Everyone is there, including Count Dracula, the werewolf, the creature from the Black Lagoon, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, King Kong, the Hunchback of Notre Dame, the Invisible Man, the Mummy, and more. This is a Rankin Bass stop-motion animated classic. Followed by The Great Imposter, the true life story of an actual serial imposter and his escapades as 6 different men. This 1960 vehicle for Tony Curtis has not been released on DVD, so this is the only chance you may get to see it. The star-studded cast includes Edmund O'Brien, Jerry Paris. Eldergone, thank you for the super chat. Eldergone says, food is expensive. You can't eat your fill. But there is no charge for Night Terrors with Bill. Thank you, Elder. Much appreciated, sir. You are the man. Jerry Paris, Raymond Massey, Arthur O'Connell, Dick Sargent, Frank Gorshin, the Riddler, Carl Malden, and Sue Ann Langdon. So don't miss movie night. Philip Blair says, or a series about coffee. The Monster Mash, says T Plateau. That's correct, just like the Monster Mash, only brought to the theaters. One of the few Rankin Bass movies. I think there were just 2 of them, and this one's their only stop-motion animation movie. Night Terrors depends exclusively on viewer support. If you enjoyed the show, please consider supporting it. In the description below are listed several ways to contribute, from big to small. And if you are able, even if you can only buy me a coffee, I thank you for your support of the show. Let's get started, shall we? TO2 on 2 platforms. Thank you, TO2. Here at CW39.com. Not sure what that is. Looks like maybe a news station, or maybe it's the CW channel 39, something like that. Anyway, there's a story here provided by the EIN Presswire entitled "New Theory Proposes Solution to the Oak Island Mystery." Takahama Olsen too with the super chat. Thank you, TO2. For some Fremantle coffee. Thank you, TO2. Much appreciated, ma'am. And the press wire begins. ancient distance unit used by the Knights Templar could be the answer to unlocking Oak Island geometry, revealing a treasure map to ancient religious artifacts. Byline, Austin, Texas, United States, March 5th, 2025. 10 scant days previous to this one. Michael Barber, an accomplished analytical chemist and data expert, has finally cracked the centuries-old mystery of Oak Island in his highly anticipated new book, Oak Island Solved. This groundbreaking work uncovers a solution that no one could have predicted in 230 years of searching. Complex geometric and mathematical treasure map, devised by the Knights Templar, using the very island itself. Green Tea is on 2 platforms as well. Thank you, Green Tea. For over 200 years, treasure hunters, including those in the popular History Channel series, The Curse of Oak Island, have searched in the wrong places on Oak Island, according to the author, Michael Barber. Barber's book reveals the astonishing fact that the Stone Triangle, along with various boulders and monuments on the island, comprise a sophisticated map with clues left behind by the Templars that form the key to solving the Oak Island mystery. In the book, Barber takes readers step by step. Welcome, Jordan Cogburn. On a journey of discovery as they unravel the island's hidden secrets, unveiling the solution that's been right in front of everyone all along. Through a meticulous application of the scientific method, Barber introduces the impossible coincidence theory, an entirely new theory. Takahama Plateau, thank you for the jewels. Much appreciated, T. Plateau. Philip Blair gives greetings. It not only solves the mystery of Oak Island, but also connects it with a web of ancient ciphers and precise geometric alignments that cannot be random and point directly to the treasure's location. By deciphering the famous 90-degree stone cipher, the author provides an unambiguous solution that all previous theories have missed. Okay, let's find out about Oak Island a little bit more detail about the Oak Island mystery itself. I first read about the Oak Island mystery probably when I was, I don't know, maybe 13 years old, 14 years old. Been around for a long time. Been around for longer than I have. Here at wikipedia.org, in the entry on the Oak Island mystery, is an early account of the history, 1790s to 1857. According to Wikipedia, Rhino Rex says, hey, Bill. Hey, Rhino Rex. Thank you, Green Tea, for the random highlights. Eldergrown asks, wait, if this guy solved the puzzle, why hasn't he gone and found the treasure? I think the island is actually owned by those other 2 dudes at this time, the cursed dudes, known as Rick and Marty. I think they own the rights to the island right now. Hopefully they'll read the guy's book, though. And Wikipedia begins in the history section. Very little verified information is known about early treasure-related activities on Oak Island. Thus, the following accounts are mostly word of mouth, reportedly going back to the late 18th century. That's the late 1700s, people. The original story by early settlers, first recorded in print in 1863, involves a dying sailor from the crew of Captain Kidd, in which he states that the treasure worth £2 million had been buried on the island. According to the most widely held discovery story, Daniel McGinnis found a depression in the ground around 1799, while he was looking for a location for a farm. McGinnis believed the depression was consistent with the Captain Kidd story. He sought help with digging. With the assistance of 2 men identified as John Smith and Anthony Vaughn, he excavated the depression and discovered a layer of flagstones 2 feet below. According to later accounts, oak platforms were discovered every 10 feet during the digging. However, the earliest accounts simply mention marks of some type at those intervals. The accounts also mentioned tool marks or pick scrapes along the walls of the pit. The earth was noticeably loose, not as hard-packed as the surrounding soil. The three men reportedly abandoned the excavation at 30 feet due to superstitious dread. Probably they were worried about a cave-in. Another twist on the story has all four people involved as teens. In this rendering, McGinnis first finds the depression in 1795 while on a fishing expedition. The rest is consistent with the first, involving the logs found every 10 feet, but ends with all four individuals giving up after digging as much as they could. All four teenagers. T-Ceratops is here. Welcome, T-Ceratops, who is also on both platforms. Thank you, T. Philip Blair says, if only someone could get a team of Dutch engineers to Oak Island. Alas, transporting Dutch engineers must be beyond our current technology. Quite true, Philip. In 1802, a group known as the Outlaw Company allegedly sailed from central Nova Scotia to Oak Island to recover what they believed to be the hidden treasure. They continued the excavation down to about 90 feet, with layers of logs found about every 10 feet, so even though that was only added to the second account of the story, apparently true, that there were logs found every 10 feet. They also discovered layers of charcoal, putty, and coconut fiber, along with the large stone inscribed with symbols. The diggers then faced a dilemma when the pit flooded with 60 feet of water for unknown reasons. The alleged excavation was eventually abandoned after workers attempted to recover the treasure from below by digging a tunnel from a second shaft that was also flooded. The last major company of the unpublished era was called the Truro Company, allegedly formed in 1849 by different investors. The pit was re-excavated back to the 86-foot level, but ended up flooding again. Of course, you're on an island. The sea is going to be wanting to flood in there naturally, right? It was then decided to drill 5 boreholes using a pod auger into the original shaft. The auger passed through a spruce platform at 100 feet, and then hit layers of oak, and then something described as metal in pieces, another layer of spruce, and then clay for 7 feet. This platform was hit twice. Each time metal was brought to the surface, along with various other items such as wood and coconut fiber. More coconut fiber. There's a picture of coconut fiber, also known as quire, without the H. Another shaft was then dug 109 feet deep, northwest of the original shaft, and a tunnel was again branched off in an attempt to intersect the treasure. Once again, though, seawater flooded the new shaft. Workers then assumed that the water was connected to the sea, because the now flooded new pit rose and fell with each tide cycle. The Truro Company shifted its resources to excavating a nearby cove known as Smith's Cove, where they found a flood tunnel system. T. Plateau asked, do you need some ideas, Bill? Always, T. Plateau. Always. When efforts failed to shut off the flood system, one final shaft was dug 118 feet deep with a branched-off tunnel going under the original shaft. Sometime during the excavation of this new shaft, the bottom of the original shaft collapsed. It was later speculated that the treasure had fallen through the new shaft into a deep void, causing the new shaft to flood as well. The Truro Company then ran out of funds, and it was dissolved sometime in 1851. The first published account took place in 1857. Welcome, Frog Fan. When the Liverpool transcript mentioned a group digging for Captain Kidd's treasure on Oak Island. This would be followed by a more complete account by a Justice of the Peace in Chester, Nova Scotia in 1861, which was also published in the transcript under the title of The Oak Island Folly. However, the first published account of what had taken place on the island did not appear until 1862. Thank you, T. Plateau, for the suggestion. I like that one. A Japanese suggestion. How apropos for Takahamo Plateau. Activities regarding the Onslow and Truro companies were also included that mentioned the mysterious stone and the Truro-owned auger hitting wooden platforms along with metal in pieces. The accounts based on the Liverpool transcript articles also ran in different periodicals and were mentioned in an 1895 book called The History of Lunenburg County. Henry Sterling says hello. Welcome, Henry. Peter Birdsall is here. The next major excavation was an attempt in 1861, carried out by the Oak Island Association Company. The original pit was then re-excavated to a depth of 88 feet, and 2 more shafts were dug. The first one missed its intended target of an alleged flood tunnel, while the other intersected the original shaft by way of a branched-off tunnel at around 105 feet deep. Both were filled with water when an alleged flood tunnel was again breached. At one point, one of the platforms placed in the original shaft collapsed and dropped to a lower level. The effect caused the next 2 platforms to drop as well, with any treasure now resting some 120 feet below the ground. Thank you, Green Tea, for the suggestion. Much appreciated, Green Tea. Thank you. This is when the first of 6 accidental deaths during excavations occurred. During the fall of 1861, when a pump engine boiler burst, the explosion was first mentioned in a novel. In 1863, while mention of a death came 5 years later. Another shaft was dug in the spring of '62. The new shaft was parallel to and connected with the original. It was used to pump water out of the original shaft. This is getting repetitious. Let's scan ahead here. Oak Island Association also did some work at Smith's Cove in an attempt to shut off and seal the alleged flood tunnels. All of these attempts were failures in the end, due to the tide which eventually broke through the barriers that were put in place. You know, how are you gonna fight the tide? Maybe you have to have a core of, I don't know how you fight a tide. Water's going to seek its own level, always. In 1866, a group known as the Oak Island El Dorado Company, or the Halifax Company, was formed to find the treasure. When a plan to shut off the alleged flood tunnels from Swiss Coves did not work, the company decided to shift focus to the original main shaft. More coconut fiber, soft clay, and blue mud was drilled up. In 1896, an unknown group arrived on the island with steam pumps and boring equipment. Thank you, Rhino Rex. Good suggestion. Yeah, this is, these are all failures, obviously. So how important are the details, right? Water in the money pit. The stone with the alleged markings. offering a second-hand description of its discovery during the early 1800s. Macaulay wrote, 1 at 80 feet was a stone-cut square, 2 feet long and about a foot thick, with several characters cut upon it. The stone was said to have been built into the chimney of an old house near the pit. Another article claimed the stone was held by the Smith family. Where's a picture of the stone? The stone, which was then in use at Creighton's bookbindery in Halifax, was of a rock of a basalt type. Basalt? Yeah, basalt, right? Hard and fine-grained. The stone he saw had no symbols in it. Although Baudoin was told they had worn off, he was skeptical because of the stone's hardness. Why didn't they make sketches of that stone? Where's a picture of the stone? The symbols associated with the 40 feet below translation. Okay, here we go. Elder Gone with a link. Thank you, Elder. Saving my butt once again. Yeah, here we go. This is the classic one they always mention. These apparently, I don't know if these are if this is an original or a photoshopped or whatever it is. These are the symbols that were found. And it evidently is known as the 40 feet below translation. Of the Oak Island stone. Let's ask AI. What was the 40 feet below translation of the stone excavated at Oak Island in Nova Scotia? The so-called 40 feet below inscription is part of the Oak Island mystery. According to lore, the stone bore a cryptic inscription that was translated as 40 feet below, 2 million pounds are buried. The origin and authenticity of the stone have been debated for years. The stone itself has since been lost, and no confirmed photograph or rubbing of the inscription exists. What did they work off of then? The translation is often attributed to a professor at Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia, though details about this translation are inconsistent. Skeptics argue that the stone story might have been fabricated or exaggerated to attract treasure hunters. Why would you want to attract more treasure hunters? Nonetheless, it remains one of the most enduring elements of the mystery. Okay, next up at 24 minutes past the hour. Is our first suggestion from Takahama Plateau. And that is and we're going to use Quant to look this up. And let's search on that. The little-known legend of Jesus in Japan. Let's culturacollectiva.com. We've never been there before. Let's go there first. Welcome, Easy417. Easy says, I think Captain Kidd may have done it. And then he was framed for piracy. Bernays Sauce is here. Welcome, Bernays. And here on a story by Isabel Carrasco, entitled The Strange Japanese Legend That Claims Jesus Died in Japan. The author begins, no gracias. And no gracias. But here it says it's by Beatrice Escavel. First it says by Isabel Carrasco. Maybe that's a credit for the photo over which there's an advertisement. Yeah, there must be a credit for the photo. And Isabel begins. For most people who grew up in countries with a Christian majority, the story of Jesus' life ends with his resurrection and rising to heaven. However, for thousands in Japan, that was not the case. This Japanese theory narrates that the story of one Daitenku Taro Jirai, better known as Jesus Christ, is said to have arrived in Japan with the intention of studying theology when he was 21 years old. I thought his ministry was when he was about 35. During his stay, he learned Japan's customs as well as its language, under the tutelage of a great master who lived near Mount Fuji. Thus he lived until he was 33 years old, that is, during the period of his life not included in the New Testament, the point at which he decided to return to Judea. Wow, after speaking a foreign language for 12 years, exclusively, I imagine. There probably were not too many Aramaic speakers in Japan at the time. I wonder how well he adapted back to Aramaic when he got back home. Frogfan has a good suggestion. Thank you, Frogfan. I got it. How apropos, Frogfan. Thank you, sir, and or madam. Thank you, Frogfan. Anyone would think that his crucifixion and resurrection came next, but that's not what this strange theory claims. Instead, Daitenku managed to elude his Roman pursuers, and the person who ended up dying nailed to the cross was Izukiri, his younger brother. Izukiri's story is practically non-existent, so his motivation for taking his brother's place remains a mystery, as does the details of his earlier life. Jesus' life as Daitenku is far more fleshed out. For instance, he ran away into exile to Japan in order to escape the Roman regime, carrying with him little more than his brother's ears and a lock of Mary's hair. His brother's ears, I guess that's a Japanese way of saying he tugged his brother along by his ears. He supposedly married a woman named Iyoku, with whom he had 3 daughters, and dedicated the rest of his life to a peaceful existence, growing garlic on a small farm. So what is the Japanese significance of garlic? Ask AI. What is the Japanese significance of garlic? In the Japanese culture, garlic has a somewhat distinct significance compared to Western culinary traditions. Symbolism, protection. Garlic considered a ward against evil spirits. Oh, similar to the people in Transylvania. Though this idea is less widespread than it is in Europe, according to AI, taboo in some settings due to its strong odor. Well, I thought it would be more interesting, but you win some, you lose some. So he lived until he was 106 years old. After Daitenku died, his body was left exposed on a hill for 4 years, according to custom before his bones were buried. Thousands of visitors consider Jesus' burial site a sacred place, as they travel for many miles to the Shingo region in order to pay their respects. Wow. Big L1 is here. Welcome, Big L1. There are also people in Japan who claim to be descendants of Jesus, even though they practice Buddhism and don't celebrate even Christmas. The museum erected in Shingo to honor Daitenku's presence is dedicated not only to Jesus' life, but also tells the story of how Shingo came to be a safe haven for one of the lost tribes of Israel. Big L1 says, like most things, garlic might symbolize an aphrodisiac. Good one, Big L1. Does that include use as an aphrodisiac? Not traditionally significant in Japanese culture. Historically, Japan's perception of garlic leaned more towards its medicinal and stamina-boosting properties, rather than as a romantic stimulant. Modern Japanese wellness trends occasionally highlight garlic for improving circulation or general vigor. But its reputation as an aphrodisiac is minimal in its cultural history. Now, also, we have a suggestion from green tea, which goes along with Tea Plateau's suggestion, and that is at 33 past the hour, stories of Jesus in India. The Lost Years of Jesus. Here at evidenceforchristianity.org, there is proof Jesus came to India. I feel compelled to open that link. Green Tea says, I think they called him Yeshua in India. Here at evidenceforchristianity.org is a story by Dr. John Oakes entitled There is Proof Jesus Came to India, made a deep study of Hinduism and taught it when he returned to Jerusalem. Question. Since the birthplace of Jesus is too far from the Indian subcontinent, there is a viable chance for him traveling to India or Tibet. This is poorly translated. All the story of Jesus, it says here, all the story of Jesus is mythological, like Indian mythology. Well, Indian mythology is not all mythological, and neither is the story of Jesus. Answer. Let's skip the question and go to the answer. First of all, you say that the birthplace of Jesus is too far from the Indian subcontinent. I assume you mean too far for it to be likely that Jesus went there. I agree with you on this. It is unlikely in the extreme that a poor Israelite such as Jesus, who was not a merchant, would have traveled to India. Then, in a rather obvious contradiction to what you just said, you say there is solid proof that Jesus came to India. Okay, where's the solid proof? Hence, there is solid proof that Jesus Christ came to India and has made a deep study of the Hindu religion. I don't think we're going to get much from this page. Next attempt. How about the Tibetan Buddhist Encyclopedia.com, The Lost Years of Jesus? Translation by Nadovich. Probably means translation from Nadovich. This is entitled The Lost Years of Jesus, The Life of Saint Isa. In 1894, Nicholas Nadovich published a book called The Unknown Life of Christ. He was a Russian physician who journeyed extensively throughout Afghanistan, India, and Tibet. Nadovich journeyed through the lovely passes of Bolan, over the Punjab, down into the arid rocky land of Ladakh, and into the majestic vale of Kashmir of the Himalayas. During one of his journeys, he was visiting the capital of Ladakh, near where the Buddhist convent Hemis is. He had an accident that resulted in his leg being broken. This gave him the unscheduled opportunity to stay a while at the Hemis convent. There he learned that there existed ancient records of the life of Jesus Christ. In the course of his visit at the great convent, he located a Tibetan translation of the legend and carefully noted in his carnet de voyage over 200 verses from the curious document known as the Life of Saint Isa. He was shown 2 large yellowed volumes containing the biography of Saint Isa. Nadovich enlisted a member of his party to translate the Tibetan volumes, while he carefully noted each verse in the back pages of his journal. When he returned to the Western world, there was much controversy as to the authenticity of the document. It was accused of creating a hoax and ridiculed as an impostor. In his defense, he encouraged a scientific expedition to prove the original Tibetan documents existed. Well, I guess you could go to the same, what's it called again? Tibetan monastery, is that what they said? Convent, it says here. A Tibetan convent. I wonder if it still exists. The Hemis convent. Let's find out from AI. Does the Hemis convent still exist in India? It's actually the Hemis monastery. Yes, that's the one. Has there ever been a major fire there? There are no records of a major fire. Unlike some other historic monasteries in the Himalayan region, it has largely avoided catastrophic events like fires. It's known for its extensive collection of ancient artifacts, including valuable religious paintings, gold statues, and texts. Its well-preserved state is partly due to its remote location in Ladakh, which helped shield it from invasions and disasters that affected other monasteries. There you go. Find the original document. King of Kong says, no way. Hinduism is based on hundreds of gods. Jesus would not promote false gods when he is the Son of God. That author is a dope. Thank you, Kinga. And welcome. Philip Blair found a book, When Jesus Lived in India, The Quest for the Aquarian Gospel, The Mystery of the Missing Years by Alan Jacobs. Is this monastery mentioned in a book by Alan Jacobs? There's no widely recognized record of Alan Jacobs specifically mentioning Headless Monastery in his published works. The book I mentioned. Anyway, back to the lost. Anyway, he was shown. One of his skeptics was Swami Abhadananda. Abhadananda journeyed into the Arctic region of the Himalayas, determined to find a copy of the Headless manuscript or to expose the fraud. His book of travels, entitled Kashmir, Tibet, tells of a visit to the Headless Gonpa and includes a Bengali translation of 224 verses, essentially the same as the Nadovich text. He was thereby convinced of the authenticity of the Issa legend. There you go. It was found twice. In 1925, another Russian named Nicholas Roerich arrived at Headless. He apparently saw the same documents as Nadovich and the Abhadananda, and he recorded in his own travel diary the same legend of Saint Issa. Speaking of Issa, Roerich quotes legends which have the estimated antiquity of many centuries. He passed his time in several ancient cities of India. Oh, this is the quotes about Issa, about Jesus. He passed his time in several ancient cities of India, such as Benares. All loved him because Issa dwelt in peace with Vaishyas and Shudras, whom he instructed and helped. But the Brahmins and Kshatriyas told him that Brahma forbade those to approach who were created out of his womb and feet. The Vaishyas were allowed to listen to the Vedas only on holidays, and the Shudras were forbidden not only to be present at the reading of the Vedas, but could not even look at them. Issa said that the man had filled the temples with his abominations. In order to pay homage to metals and stones, man sacrificed his fellows in whom dwells a spark of the Supreme Spirit. Man demeans those who labor by the sweat of their brow, in order to gain the goodwill of the sluggard who sits at the lavishly set board. But they who deprive their brothers of the common blessing shall be themselves stripped of it. The Vaishyas and Shudras were struck with astonishment and asked what they could perform. Issa bade them, "Worship not the idols. Do not consider yourself first. Do not humiliate your neighbor. Help the poor. Sustain the feeble. Do evil to no one. Do not covet that which you do not possess, and which is possessed by others. Many, learning of such words, decided to kill Isa, but Isa, forewarned, departed from the place by night. Afterward, Isa went into Nepal and into the Himalayan mountains. Well, perform for us a miracle, demanded the servitors of the temple. Isa replied to them, miracles made their appearance from the very day when the world was created. He who cannot behold them is deprived of the greatest gift of life. But woe to you, enemies of men, woe unto you, if you await that he should attest his power by a miracle. End quote. Isa taught that men should not strive to behold the eternal spirit with one's own eyes, but to feel it with the heart, and to become a pure and worthy soul. Frog Fan says, Jesus was not afraid of Brahma. He would have told them, come to me, brah. Come to me, brah. Not a quote from Isa. Not only shall you not make human offerings, but you must not slaughter animals, because all is given for the use of man. Do not steal the goods of others, because that would be usurpation from your near one, your neighbor. Do not cheat, that you may in turn not be cheated. Be aware, you who divert men from the true path, and who fill people with superstition and prejudice, who blind the vision of the seeing, and who preach subservience to material things. Then Pilate, ruler of Jerusalem, gave orders to lay hands upon the preacher Isa and to deliver him to the judges, without, however, arousing the displeasure of the people. But Isa taught, do not seek straight paths in darkness, possessed by fear, but gather force and support each other. He who supports his neighbor strengthens himself. I tried to revive the laws of Moses in the hearts of people. This is a quote. And I say, I wonder how they said Moses in Hindi. And I say unto you that you do not understand their true meaning. Welcome, Synchro 505. Michael has arrived. Welcome, Mike. We're talking about Jesus travels in India right now. Almost done with. And coming up to the next topic. New topics are welcome, Mike, in case you are of a mind to provide one. But the meaning of laws are often distorted. End quote from Jesus in India. Then the ruler said to Isa, his disguised servants, that they should watch his actions and report about his words to the people. Thou just man, said the disguised servant of the ruler of Jerusalem, approaching Isa, teach us, should we fulfill the will of Caesar or await the approaching deliverance? But Isa, recognizing the disguised servant, said, I did not foretell unto you that you should be delivered from Caesar, but I said that the soul which was immersed in sin would be delivered from sin. End quote. At this time, an old woman approached the crowd, but was pushed back. Then Isa said, Reverence, woman, mother of the universe. In her lies the truth of creation. She is the foundation of all that is good and beautiful. She is the source of life and death. Upon her depends the existence of man, because she is sustenance of his labors. She gives birth to you in travail. She watches over your growth. Bless her. Honor her. Defend her. Love your wives and honor them, because tomorrow they shall be mothers, and later progenitors of a whole race. Their love ennobles man, soothes the embittered heart, and tames the beast. Wife and mother, they are the adornments of the universe. How can you top that? Green Tea says, since today is the Ides of March, beware. Thank you for the warning, Green Tea. Next up, a suggestion from Rhino Rex. At 50 past the hour. But first, don't forget, folks, the movie's coming up. Did I get rid of the movies? The movies aren't still up, are they? God, I hope not. Are the movies still up, people? I gotta see. I can look and see. No, we're good. Thank goodness. Coming up this Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, only on Twitch, and hosted by Gotcha Man. Mad Monster Party. Here's a review from IMDb. You have to see this movie. I saw this movie when it first came out and totally loved it, especially Phyllis Diller's character. I saw it several times, and I mentioned it to my sister, and she told me it hadn't been on in years. Finally, about 5 years ago, I found it. I bought 2 copies, one for me and one for my future grandchildren. I love it and watch it every year since I got it. It's great fun, and I still enjoy it immensely. Of course, it's a Rankin Bass stop-motion animation movie. They're the same people who did Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which sometimes comes around again, maybe? I don't know if it does or not. And this is followed by The Imposter. And here in a review from IMDb, enjoyable shtick about a real-life con artist, similar to Catch Me If You Can. The movie is quintessential Tony Curtis. It tells the true story of Ferdinand Waldo Damara, who assumed different identities, usually without the necessary credentials. The real Damara was somewhat heavy-set, unlike Curtis. However, Curtis captures the essence of Damara's likability, which was probably the reason for his success. The real Damara found ways of inserting himself into situations without alienating or threatening those already there. It's a thoroughly entertaining film with a memorable musical score. So don't miss that out. Don't miss us on movie night. And now, at 53 minutes past the hour, it's time for Rhino Rex suggestion. And that is The Valley of the Headless Men. Also known as Nahanni National Park Reserve. I'm sorry, Nahanni. We've already looked at strangeoutdoors.com, so let's go to a different source. The lore behind the mystery at folders.com. Let's give that a try. TrippyCast says, howdy doody. Welcome to TrippyCast. Freebird is here. Welcome, Freebird 147, rather. I'm sorry, Freebird 0147. Doesn't YouTube sometimes add extra numbers on against your will? I know that it gave me extra numbers for some reason. So here at Folders, it's actually Folders Travel. I thought it might be Travel. Is a story by Chloe Berg entitled The Haunting History of This Canadian National Park. Subtitled The Northwest Territories Valley of the Headless Men is steeped in lore and legend. And Chloe begins. Dark mountain spires pierce the fog against a steely sky, making Nahanni National Park seem more akin to Mordor than Canada. Eldergone with a link. JustHistoryPost.com. Let's do this one instead. Thank you, Elder. Although people living in medieval Europe, this is about the Headless Man. Oh, this is other Headless Man. Well, we'll do this secondarily, shall we? Boy, there's a little bit of nudity here. Not so sure about it. Going too far down on the... How many paragraphs down can I go? I'm going carefully here. Careful, careful. Careful. I dare not go any farther than this. But we can go up to Orange Head there, I think, safely. First photos. Thank you, Elder. The park can only be accessed by boat or float plane, by intrepid travelers seeking to conquer the rapids of the Nahanni River, or summit the formidable cirque of the unclimbables. Its impenetrable forests and mountains may be the primary reason Nahanni sees limited visitors. No kidding. Must be a mountain ring. The formidable cirque. But perhaps it's also because the park is shrouded in macabre legends, befitting its menacing landscape. The supernatural lore has earned Nahanni the moniker Valley of the Headless Men, and many believe this UNESCO World Heritage Site to be haunted. I need a juice. Sparrow is here. Sparrow says illustrations don't count, I think, right? Only real stuff. I don't know. I'd rather not take a risk. And this is a kid show, too. I mean, this is a family show. Let me put it that way. It's not a kid show, per se, but families watch this show, so I got to be careful. We don't need to educate anybody. Kenga has seen ancient drawings of Headless Men. Yeah, we're going to come up to that next when we cover Elder's first 3 paragraphs. Trippy Casts promises us that illustrations do count. Thank you, Trippy. Maccabeus is here. What's up, Maccabeus? Mike Mott is here, too. He was first on site on YouTube. That I needed a lot. I also have coffee, but I'm so wired now. I'm zooming. Get to the tales there, author. Blah, blah, blah. Advice, traveling, blah, 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 blah. Okay, here we go. When British writer and explorer Raymond Patterson set out to the Nahanni region from Fort Smith in 1927, he received an ominous piece of advice. Quote, men vanish in that country. And down the river, they say it's a damn good country to keep clear of, end quote. Lured by reports of gold in the area, brothers Frank and Willie McLeod journeyed from Edmonton, Alberta, to the Nahanni Range in 1904. Traveling with primitive gear, they traversed hundreds of kilometers by train, boat, and foot. During a numbingly cold winter until they reached Gold Creek. Was it really a numbingly cold winter in 1904, huh? Let's find out. From AI. Was the winter between 1904 and 1905 particularly cold, according to records available? Yes, the winter of 1904 to 1905 was notably harsh in several parts of the Northern Hemisphere, particularly in North America and Europe. They indicate this winter ranked among the colder seasons of the early 20th century. Okay, now we know. Canada. Particularly severe conditions affected parts of eastern Canada, with unusually low temperatures recorded in Quebec and Ontario. I'm not sure if... I'm so stupid. I'm not sure if Nova Scotia's on the east or the west coast. West Coast. I think it's East Coast, but I'm not sure. I should know I'm on the East Coast. I should know if it's here. Back to the story. Their efforts were rewarded that year, and they returned to their home in Fort Lard with gold in hand. However, they weren't satisfied. They made a second expedition into the Nahanni Range in 1905 and never returned. Gotchaman confirms East Coast. Gotchaman says he could drive here in about 8 hours. Oh, not bad. Not bad. Takes about 6 hours to get from here to the city, to New York City. So if you want to go to Broadway, it's going to be about 14 hours, buddy. And the traffic will not be nice. Elder Gross says, that's as far east as it gets. Thank you, Elder. Crowman has arrived. Welcome, Crowman. Nothing was heard from Frank and Willie until brother Charlie McLeod led a search in the park in 1908. When he discovered 2 skeletons at their camp on the river's edge in a vast valley. Their heads had been severed, and one man lay with his arm outstretched towards his firearm. The blankets were thrown across his brother as if he had leaped suddenly from bed, according to the reports. From that day forward, the valley has been known as Dead Men Valley and the creek called Headless Creek. It wasn't just the McLeod brothers who died or went missing in the park in the early 20th century. A Scottish engineer had been traveling with them and was never seen again. And Yukon prospector Martin Jorgensen met a similar fate in 1917. He had sent news home that he had struck it rich. Not long after, his decapitated skeleton was found outside his cabin, which had been burned to the ground, spawning rumors of headhunters in the valley. In Canadian newspapers. Numerous other reports from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police confirmed similar deaths, and a good number of people have simply vanished without a trace after setting foot in the park. Around that same era in the park's history, a series of unexplained plane crashes earned an expanse of mountains the name of Funeral Range, which borders the ominous Hell's Gate Rapids. Okay, let's go to Elder's part in this mystery. The Headless of Nahanni, followed by the mythical headless beings, the Blemmyes. How do you pronounce that? Let's see if we can ask AI. I've never tried this before. How do you pronounce the word and with what English word does it rhyme? Does it? Dragon interpreted doesn't. Enemies, Blemmyes. 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 The Blemmyes were a semi-legendary tribe mentioned in ancient and medieval texts, often described as headless beings with their faces on their chests. They were also a real nomadic people from Nubia in northeastern Africa. There we go. Although people living in medieval Europe, begins the anonymous author. Is there an author listed? Let's see. Blah, 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 blah. Negative, no author listed. Although people living in medieval Europe knew a lot more of the wider world than many may think, with strong trade links to Asia and northern Africa, they were still intrigued about what lay beyond the land known to man. And stories of creatures abounded. One such creature which fascinated for centuries was the Blemmie, spelt variously as Blemmy, Blemmyes, Blemme. More than one Blemmie is a Blemme, I guess. Angel Luis Espada has arrived. Welcome, Angel. These creatures were said to be a type of man who lived in Africa. But they did not have a head. Rather, their face appeared on their chest, their shoulders above it. A Blemmie is seen on the left of this illustration from the Livre de Merveille, Paris, around 1410. The Blemmyes were in fact a real African people, forming a nomadic kingdom in northern Nubia between 600 years before Christ and 300 years AD. So for about a millennium, almost a millennium. Synchro posits possible headhunters. Thank you, Mike. Even from their early origins, however, stories were told of their headless nature. Herodotus, who lived between 484 years and 425 years before Christ, wrote in his histories that they were known as the Acophaloi, or those without a head, and that they lived on the eastern edge of Libya. A few centuries later, circa 45 AD, a Roman geographer wrote that the Blemmyes lived in Africa and had their faces on their chests, and this was confirmed by Pliny the Elder. Well, when they say confirmed, I think they mean he copied the earlier he copied the earlier text of the Roman geographer. This was confirmed by Pliny the Elder, who said the tribe had no heads, their mouths and eyes being seated in their breasts, and he located them in Ethiopia or Nubia. Happy St. Patrick's Day, Philip Blair. Crowman says, put many Blemmyes in a bowl, you get a blancmange. I don't know what that means. Stories of these strange headless men continue long after the real Blemmyes tribe was gone. In medieval Europe, drawings of these creatures can be found in manuscripts and in the extremities of world maps charting the unknown. A drawing of a Blemmyes features in the Anglo-Saxon manuscript in the British Library dating circa 1025 AD. T Plateau asks if they had their heads on their chests, did they wear their hearts on their sleeves? And Blemmyes are also found on the Hereford Mappamundi of 1300 AD, the largest medieval map to still exist. No kidding, the largest one that still exists was from 1300. Wow. The largest to still exist. Isidore of Seville explains in his etymologies, quote, people believe that in Libya, Blemmyes are born as trunks without heads and have their mouths and eyes on their chest. Others born without necks have their eyes on their shoulders. I wonder what the reason for that is. Now, the AI was already talking about the Blemmyes as being headless. What about the actual tribe could have contributed to their reputation as being headless? Or having their heads on their chest? In their chest, I'm going to correct that. The Blemmyes, an historical nomadic people from Nubia, that's northeastern Africa, became mythologized in medieval text, and there are plausible explanations for how this misconception arose. Posture and stature. The Blemmyes may have had a distinctive posture, perhaps walking with a forward-leaning stance or keeping their heads tilted downward. Yeah, right. I don't think so. Are you serious, AI? Kenga Kong wonders if it was a DNA experiment gone wrong. Good thinking, Kenga. Synchro says it's amazing how fast the AI answers. Yeah, I know, right? Ancient observers, especially travelers, may have misinterpreted this posture, clothing, and armor. The Blemmyes were known to wear high rounded shields, I assume they mean in combat, and possibly headgear that concealed that headgear that possibly concealed their necks. From a distance, this might have headless feature. Geographical isolation. But the term acephaly, Greek for headless ones, was sometimes used metaphorically to describe people perceived as uncivilized. They don't have a brain. Therefore, they're headless. Acephaly. That's probably where it comes from. Classical writers like Herodotus describe the Blemmyes as monstrous beings. These descriptions may have been shaped by second-hand accounts. I think it was mostly shaped by the Greek word, which was misinterpreted as headless, or let's say literally interpreted as headless rather than its metaphorical region, its metaphorical definition of uncivilized. Sparrow says, speaking of infamous individuals, have you ever heard of Queho? He was an infamous Native American outlaw. I had to use Grok to jog my memory. Oh, is Grok a new search engine? Thank you, Sparrow, by the way. We're going to use that as a suggestion. Thank you, Sparrow. And let me move that to the suggestion area. All right. So since that mystery is solved to my satisfaction, let's move on to the suggestion of Frog Fan. Sparrows, your suggestion is next after that. And thank you for your suggestion. But first up, Frog Fan at 15 minutes past the hour. And the Blemmyes. Oh, I forgot to notate the time for the Blemmyes. Gonna have to look that up. Crowman says AI is getting better at being self-aware. I believe it. Grok is another AI, Elder Grown clarifies. Thank you, Elder. We're still going to use it. As a suggestion coming up after Frog Fan's suggestion, which is at 16 past the hour now. The Green Children of Woolpit. Excellent classic suggestion. allthat'sinteresting.com. Usually good for sensationalist stuff, but not for detailed stuff or stuff that goes into lots of detail. The unsolved medieval mystery. One explanation I found was that the monastery in the area, or the church in the area, would promote these mysteries because it attracted tourism, essentially. Let's go to not history skills, but let's go to history skills. The unsolved mystery. Cookie policy. Reject all. It's my new default position. Eldergrown says, while campaigning to get Star Trek renewed for a third season, fans printed bumper stickers that said, I grok Spock, and put them on cars in the Paramount parking lot. T. Plateau suggests the green skin might have something to do with the ozone layer being more protective in the place where they go up. Interesting concept. This looks really odd and undetailed. Meant for the classroom. Let's go to something else. Tales of Times Forgotten. .com has a story written by let's look at the bottom of the page and maybe they'll give us a credit. Spencer McDaniel. Spencer's a girl. I can see her picture. Sparrow wants to know, is there anything back in those days, diet or chemicals or illness, that could give the skin a greenish tinge? Good question. Like colloidal silver can make your skin blue. Right on, right? Good question. Let's start at the top. The story of the so-called Green Children of Woolpit is one of the strangest stories that had come out of medieval England. It is the story of two children, a boy and a girl, with green skin, who were, according to two chroniclers writing independently, discovered outside the village of Woolpit in and around the middle of the 12th century. Although all kinds of bizarre explanations have been proposed, I think the most mundane explanation explanation is probably the most likely. Isn't that exciting? Way to really punch through at the beginning of that story. By the way, you're going to be disappointed at the end. The story according to William of Newburgh. I actually have a video about this, and I need to go find my shoes. As I am getting cold, and this time I do know where my shoes are this time. So what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this tab. We're going to listen to my story about this question, and then we're going to come back, and after the story's over, I'm going to read about the story. Fill in the detail from this beautiful article we have found, which is right here. So, where is my story, you may well ask? My story is somewhere around YouTube. Over here. Somewhere in my studio. Sparrow says, you gotta love Occam's razor. Yeah, we don't do debunky stuff on this show, though. This show's for believers. Okay, let's go to my content. Where is that? Right here. And search for green. I've done more than one. Let's go to the earlier one first. It's also the longer one. Let's go to the longer one. What the hell? Intermission, says Elder. Yeah. I shall be back, but first I'm going to show you this. And let's view on YouTube. And it's an old one. One of the first ones I did. Love the thumbnail for this, too. Love this thumbnail. And let's get the get it up to 1080p. I don't know why it says 60p. Thank you, Philip Blair, for the super chat. Philip says there's a good story that was told by Casanova about an argument with the Spanish Inquisition over the removal of a busty statue, which lost the church tourist dollars which were sorely needed. Thank you, Philip. And thank you for the super chat, sir. Much needed and much appreciated. Nothing like losing your shoes, says TO2. And I found my shoes, Elder. They were underneath the coats. Okay, let's get this going at the highest resolution we possibly can. Okay, and start out now.
The gray wolf. The male can weigh 100 pounds, most of it muscle. Because a man will stand upright, just like a bear, the wolf will avoid him. Unless the wolf has seen too many people. He will then lose all inhibition. In England, the county of Suffolk had more people in it than most any other rural area during the 12th century. This is where the village of Woolpit got its name from the wolf pits that protected the workers of the farmland. A wolf pit was dug 6 feet or more into the soft soil. The bait was the leg of a cow thrown into the pit. The pit was then covered with branches. A couple miles to the north was a settlement of immigrants from Flanders in the neighboring village of Fornham St. Martin. They spoke the Flemish language. They wore funny-looking clothes, and they all worked as fullers. This was the worst job of the Middle Ages, involving the treatment of raw woolen cloth with large amounts of human urine. The country of Flanders is the next-door neighbor of France. When the floods came, the Flemish migrated to England, and they brought with them the loup-garou. The nature of the loup-garou can be repressed only by silver, and the Flemish were known to use the color for this purpose. Like all amalgams of silver, contact with the skin will turn it green. And may God help those who remove this barrier between humanity and lycanthropy. Arriving at the field in the morning, the farmers first would check the wolf pit so they could kill whatever was in it. On this particular day, excited to see a big hole in the branches that covered the pit, they were equally dumbfounded to find beneath it the two green children. Punishments in medieval times were very harsh for any serf that attempted to steal from the landowner. No farmer touched the children's collars. They were brought to the landowner, on whose property they were found. The lucky man was Richard Decane, whose manor was only 6 miles away by foot. We cannot know if Decane was a greedy man, but when he was asked to name the language of the children, he refused. A man as widely traveled as he would surely have recognized the Flemish tongue. He could have made inquiries in nearby Fornham St. Martin as to who might have lost their children. But he did not. He immediately confiscated their silver collars in exchange for his hospitality. Thus was he the unwitting cause of the children's reversion to their true natures. Because they were peasants, they were never offered meat, which was the only meal they now wanted. Like a canine that is offered only bowls of salad, they refused all sustenance. Today we know the level of proteins and amino acids in just plain beans very closely approximates those found in fresh meat. With noses that were many times more sensitive than that of a normal human, they smelled in these beans the essence of life, and so saved their own lives by eating the food of the master. It was only when they regained their strength that the young male became a threat. Little Adrian was old enough to associate the Decanes with his hunting pack. But when a member of the clergy visited the manor, the boy could sense his weakness. To supplement his diet with a fresh kill, the boy found himself inside the guest chamber where the priest slept. Unfortunately, his youth and inexperience resulted in a failure to protect himself. When the frightened clergyman struck out defensively with the only weapon at hand, the heavy silver crucifix, which normally hung around his neck, but which he remembered was sitting on the bedside table, and which he plunged into some part of the boy's anatomy we do not know. But we do know it did cause Adrian's sudden demise. The child died under Decane's care. Now it was in Richard's best interest, and the best interest of the church, that the remaining child be hidden from any Flemish probe. He made the girl Agnes his family servant. Still...
What a bunch of bullshit. Let's go back to even more accurate accountings. Good evening, Ryu 1972. Okay, here's the story according to William of Newburgh. The earliest account comes from the medieval chronicler William of Newburgh, who lived between 1136 and 1198. In Book 1, Chapter 7 of his book, Historia Rerum Anglicarum, History of the Deeds of the English, he begins the account by stating he does not wish to retell the story of the green children of Woolpit because it was so strange and unbelievable. But he states that he has heard that story from so many different persons of the utmost respectability, he felt compelled to recount the tale. According to William of Newburgh's account, during the harvest season of a year, during the reign of King Stephen, who ruled between 1135 and 1154. Thank you, King Kong. The villagers of the town of Woolpit in East Anglia discovered two children, a boy and a girl, who had emerged from one of a number of ancient ditches that were located near the town. Ancient ditches. I think they mean a wolf pit. I think they mean they were found in a wolf pit. He tells us that children's bodies were totally green, and they were wearing clothes of unusual color and unknown material, and that they spoke a foreign language that no one could recognize. The villagers tried to give them food, but they would not take it, even though they seemed weak from hunger. Then, by chance, it happened the villagers were bringing in beans from the field. The children grabbed some of the beanstalks and looked for beans in them, but found none, so they cried. Why were they bringing... I don't understand. Why were there no beans there? It just said the villagers were bringing in the beans. Then the villagers pulled beans from the bean pods and gave them to the children, who eagerly devoured them raw. Maybe because they didn't open the pods? For months, the children would eat nothing but raw broad beans. What's a broad bean? What is the American name for the English broad bean? Bean. Bean. Still doesn't get it. Being and Ben. The English broad bean is commonly known as the fava bean. Fava beans. Okay, now we know. After they began eating a more diverse diet, the greenness of their skin faded and their skin turned a normal color. Eventually, the children learned to speak English. They told the villagers they came from a land where Saint Martin of Tours was held in special reverence. They said they had been tending to their father's sheep in the fields when they heard a loud noise like the sound of church bells ringing, and then somehow or another found themselves in the fields beside Woolpit. They forgot the part where they go to the underworld in this account. They explained that they came from a Christian country where there were churches, but that their land was dark all the time, and that the sunlight was always dim as though it were dawn or twilight. The children were baptized, but the boy, who was the younger of the two, fell ill and died shortly. Thereafter, maybe? It says therefore here. Probably shortly thereafter. The girl, however, survived to adulthood. In fact, she even got married, I guess. As a grown woman, she was no different in any way from the native English women. She eventually married a man from King's Lynn in Norfolk. William tells us that he heard she was still living there only a few years before the writing of his account. Elder Grown bets they came from the hollow earth. Right, darkness, right? Good point, Elder. Now here's the story according to Ralph of Coggeshall. The second surviving account of the Green Children comes from the Chronicum Anglicanum, or English Chronicle, which was written about in 1220, around 30 years after William of Newburgh's book, by an English chronicler named Ralph of Coggeshall. Ralph of Coggeshall was writing much later than William, but he lived much closer to Woolpit, since Ralph's hometown of Coggeshall is only 26 miles from Woolpit. Well, back then. What year was this? 1220? I don't know if that was only during the Middle Ages or how good travel was then. 26 miles is pretty far. I don't know if you casually go to Woolpit, but the stories probably would be around more. Furthermore, Ralph explicitly states that he learned the story from Richard de Caen, the man who looked after the children himself. We have no reason to doubt this claim. And if it is true, we have no reason to doubt it, but it would make Ralph of Coggeshall's account a direct second-hand account rather than a third or even fourth hand. Gotcha, man, for an interesting suggestion for their language. If you're on Twitch, check out that comment. Ralph's account seems to be completely independent from William's. Good. Indicating that neither of them made the story up. Also indicating that they didn't use each other as a source. In other words, they both certainly heard the story from someone else. The modern-day sign for the village of Coggeshall, which was Ralph of Coggeshall's hometown. Ralph's account is somewhat shorter than William of Newburgh's. And although the two accounts agree on most aspects of the story, there are a few details upon which they disagree. For instance, while William of Newburgh says that the children were found during the reign of King Stephen, Ralph of Coggeshall says they were found during the reign of Stephen's successor, Henry II, who ruled from 1154 to 1189. T. Plateau correcting my pronunciation. Thank you. T. Plateau. Coggeshall. Just Coggeshall, huh? Thank you. Also, according to Ralph's account, the boy died before he had a chance to learn English. And the villagers learned where the children had come from exclusively from the girl. Ralph's version of the story of how the children came to Woolpit, the town, is also quite different from William's. Ralph says that the land where the children came from was not only in a state of perpetual twilight, but also that everything there was green. He also says the children had gotten lost after following some of their father's cattle into a cave, that they found their way out of the cave by following the sound of church bells, which led them to Woolpit. Ralph of Cogg's Hall also gives more information about what happened to the girl after her brother's death, but before her marriage. He tells us she worked for many years as a servant in the home of Richard Decane, but adds that according to Decane himself, she was extremely lascivious and insolent. The first question we have to ask is whether or not there is any truth at all to the story of the so-called Green Children of Woolpit. Obviously, this story as recounted by the chroniclers is unusual, but perhaps there's some remote historical basis. Given that William of Newburgh and Ralph of Cogg's Hall were both writing independent of one another, and were both writing relatively close to the time when the events they describe are alleged to have taken place, the author writes, I am rather inclined to think there is some historical basis behind the tale, especially since Ralph claims to have met with Richard Decane himself and heard the story directly from him. T. Plateau says some people in King's Lynn reckon they're related to Agnes the Green Girl. I must ask this of AI. Is Agnes the Green Girl somehow related to the Green Children of Woolpit? Evidently not, according to AI, but AI is stupid. Frogfriend says she married the jolly old green giant. And I lost my page. There we are. Now you can find all sorts of articles online about the so-called Green Children of Woolpit on the internet, nearly all of which focus on the bizarre nature of the story. Likewise, you can find all sorts of bizarre and outlandish explanations for the Green Children. That they were extraterrestrial beings from another planet, that they were fairies from another world, or that they were time travelers from the future. I think one explanation is there was a Flemish village near in the vicinity of Woolpit, and I think maybe they came from the Flemish village. They were a Flemish settlement. They were what do you call it? Leather workers. A very disgusting job at the time. Or from a parallel universe. Sparrow is correct, because the cave could have been a portal. Eldergone reminds me that's what my video was about. Thank you, Elder. Okay, we have another suggestion coming up, and that, I believe, is from Sparrow. And it is 44 minutes past the hour. And that suggestion is an infamous individual, Queho, an infamous Native American, outlaw. Queho the outlaw. Oh, Jesus. Queho, Renegade Indian Outlaw, or Scapegoat. I like the sounds of that. Let's look at that one. It's at legendsofamerica.com. Queho's Grave Marker in Pahrump Valley by Nevada Bob at Find a Grave. Let's check that out. Open image, new tab. Queho. Queho with a K on the end. 1885 to 1918, perhaps, or 1919. Nevada's last something Indian. Maybe the tribal name here is something he survived alone? I'm not sure. Maybe it'll tell us in the article. Queho, according to the page. Thank you, Sparrow. The mystery and legend of renegade Indian Queho. Oh, according to the article. Continues to be debated today. This is at legendsofamerica.com, and is there an author given as to whether he was a scoundrel or a scapegoat? Let's see if we can get an author here. Kathy Weiser. Thank you, Kathy Weiser. Was the Southern Nevada Indian a true outlaw killer? Some say serial outlaw unaliver. Or did law officers merely blame him for an abundance of unsolved crimes? Thought to have been born around 1880 at Cottonwood Island near the town of Nelson, Nevada. Queho's Cocopah mother died shortly after giving birth. Cocopah tribe. Though the identity of his father remains a mystery, various theories have been presented, including a Paiute brave from a neighboring tribe. In other words, they have absolutely no knowledge of who the father was. A white soldier from Fort Mojave, or a Mexican miner. Although the answer to this question will never be known, Queho was an outcast from the start due to his shameful mixed blood. I don't know about that. I don't know if the Indians attached that much meaning to mixed blood. Maybe to the white man. I don't think he would be an outcast from his own tribe, though. I wouldn't think. I don't know. Adding to this, the boy was born with a club foot, which further caused the local tribes to reject him. Based on that alone, maybe they rejected him. Raised on a reservation in Las Vegas, he worked from an early age as a ranch laborer and a wood gatherer in several nearby mining camps. Always known to be sullen, moody, and quick-tempered, it was no surprise when he began to have trouble with the law. Synchro reminds us that Pahrump, Nevada was where Art Bell once lived. Thank you, Synchro. Some stories, though unconfirmed, tell of him being involved in the death of another Indian in 1897, but newspaper accounts of his exploits did not begin until November 1910. The first report tells of Queho being the main suspect in the slaying of another Indian during a brawl on the Las Vegas reservation. Allegedly, he and the other man, named Harry Bismarck, were drinking when the dispute began. Queho went on the run and, according to some accounts, murdered 2 Paiute Indians when he stole their horses in his escape. Jesus. Yeah, he needs to take along a fresh horse, of course. On his flight, he stopped for supplies in Las Vegas and was confronted by a shopkeeper named Haivan, which resulted in Queho breaking both the man's arms and fracturing his skull with a pick handle. Fleeing south to Nelson, he took shelter in El Dorado Canyon. Before long, word came from Searchlight that Queho had been beaten to death. Wait. That Queho had beaten to death. This is a really good flavor. It's expensive. It's Splenda. It's liquid instead of powder form. Diet pink lemonade, but it just tastes so good. And it makes a little bit more too because it's very concentrated. Invisible sippy cup time. Has an excellent aftertaste. According to the tale, he had beaten the man with a piece of timber after the woodcutter refused to pay him. Deputy Sheriff Howe formed a posse, and the group first went to the scene of Woodworth's killing. They found a distinctive print left by Queho's club foot. From there, they trekked the fugitive to El Dorado Canyon, where they led to the Goldbug mine. There they found the body of the watchman, Doc Gilbert, shot in the back. Gilbert's special deputy badge number 896 had been stolen. Continuing to trek Queho to the Colorado River, they lost the trail. Though the lawmen had searched for Queho over a 200-mile area ranging from Crescent to Nipton, they found nothing but trace footprints. Having thought that Queho would be easy to track and capture due to his club foot, they couldn't have been more wrong. After some time, they finally gave up the chase. However, Nevada State Police Sergeant Newgard soon took over the search, along with several Indian trackers and 2 experienced hunters. Though they also found signs of Queho's presence, they too finally gave up the search when they ran short of supplies. The frustrated and exhausted lawmen returned to Las Vegas empty-handed in 1911. Over the next several years, Queho's sightings continued and his legend grew. Up and down the length of the mighty Colorado, miners and settlers told of missing cattle, unexplained thefts, and mysterious unalivings. All were attributed to the Phantom Renegade, which was a constant source of embarrassment to the local lawmen. In 1913, local newspapers attributed the death of a 100-year-old blind Indian known as Canyon Charlie to Queho. Allegedly, Charlie's few provisions, which included little more than food, were gone, prompting everyone to believe that Queho would kill for almost anything. However, others disputed the murder as being Queho's responsibility, as the old Indian was known to be the fugitive's friend and confidant. A few months later, when 2 more miners working claims at Jenny Springs were found shot in the back and their provisions were stolen, these murders too were blamed on the illustrious Outlaw. An Indian woman found dead a short time later was also blamed on the Renegade. Hysteria continued to grow until rewards reaching $2,000 were offered for his capture, dead or alive. And what was that worth? Let's find out. 1913. Let us find out. From AI. What is $2,000 from the year 1913 worth in today's currency? U.S. Yeah, it's taken them a while to figure that out. There we go. $61,000. So you can make a living. The Searchlight Bulletin was quick to remind its readers of the reward while screaming, "The only blank Indian is a blank Indian." You fill in the words. Though the Fuhrer died for several years, area settlers continued to worry whenever someone went missing for an hour or two. Queho became the stuff of legends and the boogeyman to scare children into behaving. In 1919, the murderous tales would begin again, when two prospectors named William Hancock and Ether Taylor were found unalive upstream from El Dorado Canyon. Both had been shot in the back. There's an MO there for certain, right? There is an MO there. Whether it's Queho or not. And Taylor's head had been smashed in with an axe handle. Queho was immediately the prime suspect, with supplies found missing and Queho's footprints allegedly being found at the site. About a week later, Maud Douglas, the wife of an El Dorado Canyon miner, was awakened in the night by a commotion in the larder at the rear of the cabin. When her husband heard a shotgun blast, he found her shot in the chest and surrounded by canned goods. What a bastard, whoever it was. When authorities arrived at the cabin near the Tecatocup mine, they pronounced it to have been yet another crime committed by Queho, as they allegedly found his footprints around the cabin. Though a 4-year-old boy in Maud's care said the woman had been killed by her husband. No one listened, immediately resuming the chase for the elusive Indian renegade once again. The reward for Queho's capture was increased to $3,000. About $90,000 US in today's money. And Southern Nevada Sheriff Sam Gay ordered Deputy Frank Walt, or Waite. It is Waite, Deputy Frank Waite, to round up a posse and hire the best trackers to kill or capture Queho once and for all. Although they trekked the outlaw to north to Las Vegas Wash, they soon lost his trail in the Muddy Mountains. Blah blah blah. They didn't find Queho. Sightings continued over the next several years. The last time the Renegade was reportedly seen was when a Las Vegas policeman spotted him walking down Fremont Street in February of 1930. The officer immediately summoned reinforcements, but by the time they arrived, Queho was gone once again. As the legend was finally beginning to die, 3 prospectors found the remains of a dead Indian in 1940. High in a cave on the side of Black Canyon, the mummified body was found along with a Winchester .30-30 rifle, clothing, cooking utensils, tools, and a special deputy badge. Number 896. The one that he took off the deputy he killed. So yeah, the guy's a murderer. There's the proof right there. Frank Waite, then chief of police of Las Vegas, an original posse member from 1910, rushed to the scene and positively identified the remains as belonging to Queho. Okay, guys, that's about it, except for a reminder of the upcoming movie this coming Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. That is Mad Monster Party, in which the Baron von Frankenstein retires from the monstrosity-making business, summoning an international roster of monsters to a creepy convention. This is a Rankin Bass stop-motion animation classic, and the only stop-motion animation ever made as a movie by Rankin Bass. The cast includes Count Dracula, the werewolf, the creature from the Black Lagoon, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, King Kong, the Hunchback of Notre Dame, the Invisible Man, the Mummy, and many more. Features the voices of Boris Karloff and Phyllis Diller. Then you have The Great Imposter, the true life story of an actual serial imposter and his escapades as 6 different men. This 1960 vehicle for Tony Curtis, which has not been released on DVD. So this is the only chance you may get to see it. Also has a star-studded cast, including Edmund O'Brien, Jerry Paris, Raymond Massey, Arthur O'Connell, Dick Sargent, Frank Gorshin, the Riddler, for Christ's sake, from Batman, Carl Malden, and Sue Ann Langdon. Don't miss it. Until then, may God bless and protect you all.